There are moments in life where the man you are becomes unbearable, not because he is weak, not because he is broken, but because deep inside you know you are not living the life you were meant for. You look in the mirror and don't see an enemy. You see a stranger, a man who smiles on command, performs for approval, numbs himself with distractions, but deep down, he's not okay. You say the right things, but you don't feel powerful. You don't feel seen. You don't feel real. And then the question appears, how long do I stay like this? How long do I keep abandoning myself for comfort? How long do I keep repeating the same patterns? Waiting for the world to change while I remain the same. This is not about motivation. This is about rebirth, about becoming so quiet, so focused, so intentional, that even the old version of you wouldn't recognize what you've become. Not in 7 years, not in 7 months, in 7 days. Before any true transformation begins, there must first be silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from external stillness, but the kind that rises from within. You see, most people think change is about doing more. More workouts, more goals, more hustle. But the truth is you cannot build a new self on top of noise. This is why so many men fail to change. Not because they lack motivation, but because they are never alone with their thoughts long enough to hear the truth. From the moment they wake up, their senses are bombarded. The phone screen flashes before their eyes, even when adjusting to the sunlight. Notifications, voices, music, podcasts. They say it's productivity, but it's not. It's noise. Distraction dressed as development. And the danger of this is subtle. Because when you are constantly absorbing other people's voices, you lose track of your own. You forget what you sound like inside. You forget what you believe. What do you feel? What you need? So day one is not about adding. Day one is about subtracting. Silence the noise. Step away from the world, not because the world is wrong, but because you are learning to hear yourself again. And in that silence, something uncomfortable will happen. You will begin to feel things. You'll feel emotions you've been avoiding. Regret, shame, guilt. The weight of decisions made from fear. The longing for approval you've been chasing for years. And the instinct will be to run, to reach for your phone, to play a song, to check a message. But this time don't. This time stay. Because of that discomfort, is your soul reintroducing itself to you. It says, I've been trying to talk to you, but you were too busy, too loud, too entertained. It's not judgment. It's an invitation to listen, to feel, to be present. So here is your task for the next 24 hours. No scrolling, no music, no podcasts, no external stimulation unless necessary. You wake up and instead of grabbing your phone, you sit, you breathe, you observe, you feel the urges arise to distract, to check, to numb, but you don't obey them. You write, you walk, you sit with your coffee or your water, and you taste it fully. Every time your mind screams for noise, you say, not today. Because today is the day you meet the man beneath the mask, the one you've ignored, the one you've abandoned to fit in, the one who knows what needs to be done. If you'd only give him space to speak. Silence is not emptiness. It is full of answers, of wisdom, of direction. But you can only receive them if you stop talking, if you stop consuming, if you stop reacting. In martial arts, we learn that stillness is not weakness. It is preparation. It is power. It is choosing presence over panic. And when you begin from silence, every next step becomes intentional. You don't move out of compulsion. You move out of clarity. So many men are trying to build discipline on top of chaos, trying to become kings while still thinking like pawns, trying to be present with others when they cannot be present with themselves. And it's not because they are broken. It's because they've forgotten the way home. Silence brings you home. And when you return, when you look at yourself not through the lens of judgment, but through the eyes of understanding, you begin to see. You don't need to fix everything all at once. You just need to begin with space, not to control, but to listen, to reconnect. That's day one. And it is sacred. Because if you can't sit with your mind, you will never master it. But if you can stay in the silence long enough to see what's there, you've already started the rebirth. That is how it begins. Not with a scream, but with a whisper. The second day is the hardest for most. Because now that the noise is gone, you're left with the truth. And it's no longer filtered through distraction. It's raw, it's direct, and it's unavoidable. You wake up and there is no music to hide behind. No scrolling to numb the discomfort. There is just you and the mirror. Not the physical one, but the inner one. The mirror that shows you who you really are, not who you pretend to be. Not who others believe you are, but the man behind the performance. This is the moment where honesty either breaks you or builds you. Most people lie to themselves without even knowing. They say, I'm fine, but they feel empty. They say, I'm doing my best, but deep down, they know they're hiding. They say, I'll change one day, but they've been saying that for years. So on day 2, you must stand still and look closely. You ask yourself the questions no one dares to ask. Where am I pretending? Who do I blame so I don't have to take responsibility? What parts of me do I reject because I think they make me unlovable? Where am I still a boy, waiting for permission to become a man? And when the answers come, they sting. They bruise the ego. They crack the armor. But that's the point. Because you cannot grow in truth while living in denial. This is not about shame. Shame keeps you stuck. This is about ownership. You can't change what you refuse to name. You can't fix what you won't face. And if you're not brutally honest with yourself, you will keep repeating cycles that make you feel smaller, weaker, and more numb. So here's what you do. You find a quiet place, you take out a notebook, and you write without filters. Not to impress, not to perform, but to uncover. You write, what habits are killing your spirit? What conversations are you avoiding out of fear? What relationships are draining you because you're afraid to be alone? What goals are you pretending to pursue, but never truly commit to? You write until the page stings. You let the tears come if they must, because tears are just the body's way of telling the truth. And then you do something radical. You look in the mirror. Look, and instead of criticizing, you thank the man looking back. Because even in all his mess, his pain, his flaws, he showed up. He came to the mirror. He stopped lying. That is not weakness. That is power. Most people live their entire lives avoiding that mirror. They build entire personalities to protect themselves from feeling exposed. But exposure is where healing begins. It's where freedom lives. So when you face yourself without judgment, you create the space for change. Not because you're not enough, but now you're ready to become whole. And from that place of truth, you will know exactly what needs to end, what needs to begin, what must be said, what must be surrendered. Day 2 is not glamorous. It won't get applause, but it is the foundation for everything that follows. Because the man who lies to himself can never trust his own decisions, but the man who sees himself clearly, even the broken parts, can begin to live in alignment. You must become that man, not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, today. And when you've done that, when you've faced the mirror and didn't run, you're ready. Ready to break the patterns that have defined you for too long. That is what comes next. You've sat in silence. You've faced the mirror. Now it's time to do something with what you've seen. Because awareness without action, it's just another form of avoidance. Another spiritual escape route dressed as growth. Now is the moment where change truly begins, and it begins with patterns. You see, life does not change because of what you wish. Life changes when you start disrupting the automatic loops. The emotional, physical, and mental cycles you've been unconsciously obeying for years. Some of these patterns were created to protect you. But protection is not the same as evolution. A boy hides, a man moves. So you must ask, What are the patterns that keep me asleep? For some of you, it's waking up and grabbing your phone before your feet even touch the ground. For others, it's reaching for food, for porn, for mindless comfort the moment discomfort appears. It's snapping in anger when you're hurt. It's retreating into silence when what you need is connection. It's quitting the moment things get boring or hard or uncertain. And what makes patterns so dangerous is they feel normal. They feel like you. But they are not you. They are just rehearsed responses to old wounds. So day 3 is about one thing: interrupt. You see the pattern, you pause, and you choose differently. That's all. That's everything. The man who can interrupt his behavior in the heat of emotion, in the grip of craving, he is a man who is no longer a slave to his past. But don't expect it to feel good. The moment you try to break a pattern, your mind will resist, your body will protest. The old self will whisper, "Come back. This is who we are. This is safe." But comfort is not the goal. Liberation is. Let me give you something practical. Take one pattern you've already identified. Maybe it's watching mindless content late at night to avoid loneliness. Maybe it's giving in to anger when you feel disrespected. Maybe it's chasing women to fill a void only you can heal. Now, when the trigger appears, you pause, you breathe, you let the urge rise, and you do not obey it. You replace the reaction with something different. You journal, you breathe, you go for a walk. You reach out to someone who sees the man you're trying to become, not the one you're leaving behind. It's not about perfection. It's about interrupting the loop. Every time you do this, you weaken the old wiring. And every time you follow through, you cast a vote for the man you are becoming. There's a quote in martial arts: "The way you train is the way you live." If you train your mind to submit to every craving, you will never hold your center when life punches you. But if you train yourself to stay conscious in the tension, to remain calm in discomfort, to act from choice instead of compulsion, then you are building something real, something no one can take from you. This is the day you begin to take your power back, not by controlling the world, but by mastering the only domain that's ever been yours, yourself. And it's hard, because you've lived inside these patterns for so long, they feel like home. But you must remember, just because something feels familiar doesn't mean it's right. Just because something feels safe doesn't mean it serves you. So day 3 is about disruption. When you feel the pull of the old life, you pause, you feel, you choose again. That is the difference between reaction and response, between boy and man, between living unconsciously and walking the warrior's path. And once you've disrupted enough cycles, once you've stopped the spinning long enough to breathe again, you will notice something strange. Your body still holds tension. Your mind still feels scattered. You've broken the loops, but the chaos is still inside. Now comes the moment where you don't just break the pattern. You rebuild the man. And that begins with structure, with sweat, with breath, with discipline. You've broken the pattern. You've interrupted the loops. And now, your mind feels raw open, almost like fresh soil after a storm. This is a sacred place to be. But understand something: space will always be filled. And if you don't fill it with conscious structure, the old chaos will creep back in, quietly, invisibly, and eventually, completely. This is why day 4 is not about motivation. It is about discipline. But not the kind that's loud and showy, not punishment, not ego-driven performance. I'm speaking of the discipline that is rooted in self-respect, because the body is the anchor of the mind. And if you want peace in here, Ha touches chest, you must first find it through here. Ha raises hand, then fists it with strength. This is what most people get wrong. They chase mental clarity through thinking. But thoughts are unstable. They shift. They float. The body, when trained with intention, brings gravity. It becomes your temple, your compass, your proof. There is something deeply spiritual about sweat. When you push your body, not to look good, but to feel present, you enter a different state. You no longer live in your head. You come back now. So this is your mission today: establish structure, set rituals, and train, not to escape pain, but to face it with strength. You wake up, and your mind resists. It says, rest. It's not the right day. We can skip, and in that moment, you don't negotiate. You don't discuss. You simply move. Because discipline is a language your future self understands. It is the bridge between who you are and who you were meant to become. Let me ask you something simple. When was the last time you kept a promise to yourself? Not to someone else, not to prove something, just to you. When you say, I will train, and you follow through, that is not just fitness. That is integrity. That is alignment. That is a man who can trust himself again. Start small if you must. 10 minutes of breath work. 20 minutes of bodyweight movement. Cold showers to awaken the warrior inside. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. Daily actions that remind you, I am no longer waiting to be saved. I am saving myself. And something incredible begins to happen. As the body grows stronger, the mind becomes quieter. The anxiety softens. The emotional storms pass quickly. You are no longer swayed by every thought or impulse. Because you've trained your vessel to be still, to be solid, to be ready. This is what monks understand. This is what warriors know. Discipline is not about control. It is about freedom. Freedom from addiction. Freedom from weakness. Freedom from the voices that say, you'll always be this way. Every rep you complete, every breath you hold, every early morning, you rise when you could have stayed in bed. You are sending a message into your nervous system. I am no longer my past. And now, you carry yourself differently. You walk into rooms not seeking approval, but radiating presence. You speak more slowly. You listen deeper. You move with intent. Because your body is no longer a burden. It is your ally, your instrument, your mirror. But there is one more layer. You can have the silence. You can face the mirror. You can break the patterns and build discipline. But if you do not heal what's inside, you will continue to sabotage it all. Because discipline without healing becomes self-punishment. So on day 5, we go deeper. We don't just build strength. We face the pain we've buried underneath it. And we begin to heal. Up until now, you've built discipline. You've faced the patterns. You've stepped into structure. But discipline without compassion becomes a prison. And strength without healing becomes armor. So now we go inward. Because no matter how much you train your body, no matter how perfect your morning routine is, if the little boy inside you is still hurting, you will keep bleeding in silence. You'll keep chasing validation. You'll keep reacting like a wounded child in the body of a grown man. You'll keep trying to prove your worth to people who don't even see you. And worst of all, you will keep sabotaging the peace you're finally starting to taste. There is a boy inside every man, and for many that boy is scared, lonely, confused, still waiting to be seen, still hoping someone will come save him. But here's the truth: no one is coming, and no one needs to. Because you are here now. You are the man that boy needed. You are the one who finally chooses to stop ignoring him. This is the day you sit with your past, not to drown in it, but to understand it. You sit with the memories, the pain, the silence, the father who never taught you, the mother who never hugged you, the moments where you were told, in subtle and brutal ways, you are too much. You are not enough. You must be strong, but never soft. You must win, but never cry. And the boy believed it. So he hid. He became who the world said he needed to be, and lost himself in the process. But today, you look at that boy. You imagine him sitting in front of you, scared, uncertain, trying to be perfect. And you do something radical. You say, it's okay now. You don't need to fight anymore. You don't need to prove anything. You are safe with me. This is what awakening the inner man looks like. Not domination, not arrogance, but integration. The boy doesn't disappear. He doesn't need to. He becomes part of your strength. He becomes the source of your empathy, your creativity, your emotional depth. A real man does not have any wounds. A real man has turned his wounds into wisdom. So day 5 is sacred. Because when you stop running from your pain, you stop projecting it onto everyone else. You stop chasing women to feel whole. You stop needing attention to feel valuable. You stop blaming others for the emptiness only you can heal. You come home to yourself, and suddenly life softens. You begin to forgive. Not to let others off the hook, but to let yourself breathe. You begin to trust, not because everyone is safey, but because you are. You begin to speak honestly, not to impress, but to connect. The boy no longer has to scream for attention, because the man has finally listened. And now you are grounded, you are centered, you are whole. But there is still one final piece, because healing is not the end, it is the beginning. Once you've faced your pain, once you've remembered your power, once the noise has gone quiet and the vision has returned, there is only one thing left to do: step forward, speak with clarity, lead with purpose, live with intention. And that it is day 6. The pain is no longer holding you. The boy inside has been seen. You've stepped into discipline. You've remembered your strength. Now, the time has come to embody it. Because what is clarity if you don't live it? What is the strength if you don't express it? What is the purpose of it staying locked inside your chest? On day 6 we rise, not for show, not for ego, but to begin living as the man we've been meeting in silence, in suffering, in stillness. This is the day when everything slows down, but becomes more precise. Your words, your movements, your decisions, they are no longer reactions. They are expressions of who you are becoming. Most men speak to fill the silence, but a man who has faced himself speaks only when necessary. And every word he chooses is intentional. Because words carry weight, they shape reality. And when you speak without awareness, you scatter your energy, you confuse your path, you leak power. But when you speak with purpose, you build bridges, you draw boundaries, you call things into being. So ask yourself, are my words aligned with my values? Do I speak to connect or to control? Do I say what I mean, or do I still fear how it will be received? This is where truth becomes practice. You stop apologizing for your presence. You stop explaining yourself to people who never wanted to understand. You stop pretending to be smaller just to keep the peace. Because the world doesn't need more agreeable men. The world needs anchored men, clear men, present men. And presence is not noise. Presence is felt in silence, in posture, in eye contact, in the stillness before a decision. So now your movement changes too. You no longer rush, you no longer chase, you study the room, you feel the moment. And when you move, it is with precision. No wasted steps, no scattered intentions, no flinching. This is the kind of man that commands respect without needing to demand it, because his presence speaks before he ever opens his mouth. And this is not about becoming robotic. This is not about suppressing who you are. It's the opposite. It's about learning to channel who you are. The wildness you used to waste on distraction now fuels your mission. The emotional chaos you used to suppress now becomes empathy, creativity, and depth. The confusion you used to run from has become clear in motion. This is the art of becoming unshakable. Not perfect, but precise, not rigid, but rooted. You begin to attract differently, not because of what you say, but because of how you move, how you walk into a space, how you hold eye contact, how you choose to listen more than you speak, how you embody peace and power at the same time. This is the man who can lead. This is the man who can love without losing himself. This is the man who can build not from force, but from alignment. But there's still one final piece. You've built the discipline. You've faced the pain. You've sharpened your speech and movement. Now comes the real test. Can you sustain it? Not for a day, not for a moment, but for a lifetime. That is what day 7 is about. Not changing anymore, but living as the change. Now we arrive, day 7. You've walked through silence. You've broken your patterns. You've disciplined the body, anchored the mind. You've faced the wounds and met the boy inside. You've begun to speak with purpose and move with precision. So now the question is simple. Will you live as the man you became, or return to the man the world trained you to be? Because this is where most fall back. Not because they are weak, but because they think the journey is over. But the truth is, day 7 is not the end. It is the beginning. Because transformation isn't proven in silence, or journaling, or even discipline alone. It is proven in the everyday choices you make when no one is watching. You become unrecognizable not because you post about it, not because you say, "I've changed," but because of who you are. How you show up speaks for itself. So now, we do not chase intensity. We chase consistency. Can you wake up and move when you don't feel like it? Can you hold eye contact when it's uncomfortable? Can you speak your truth when silence would be easier? Can you choose presence when distraction tempts you? This is the test. You are no longer the man who waits. You are no longer the man who begs. You are no longer the man who breaks at the first sign of resistance. You are the man who breathes, grounds himself, remembers who he is, and acts accordingly. And hear me, this is not about perfection. You will slip. You will forget. You will face moments of doubt. But the difference now is you return quicker. You recover faster. You don't spiral like before. Because of this new man, he has tools. He has awareness. He has standards. He remembers. You remember what it felt like to sit in silence and face yourself. You remember what it cost to break those patterns. You remember the sweat, the pain, the discipline. You remember the younger version of you and the promise you made to never abandon him again. So now you walk. Not rushed, not reactive, but rooted. You walk into each room as a presence, not a performance. You speak because your words carry meaning, not because you fear silence. You train your body because you love yourself, not because you hate how you look. You connect with others not to fill a void, but to share the overflow of a life that is already full. This is how you live as the man you became, not loudly, but clearly, not through force, but through alignment. You've burned the old identity. You've rebuilt from within. You've sharpened your blade. Now, you walk into the world with quiet intensity. This is not about changing your life in 7 days. This is about remembering who you are in 7 layers and learning how to return there again and again and again. Because the path of mastery is repetition, and every day you choose to live aligned, you make it harder to return to who you used to be. So live like this. Speak like this. Live like this. Let people feel the change before they even hear you say a word. Let the world ask you, what happened to you? And let your eyes answer with silence and fire. This is how a man becomes unrecognizable. Not by changing his clothes or flexing in the mirror, but by becoming unshakable on the inside. And when you forget, because you will, you return to day 1. You sit again. You listen again. You rebuild again. This is the cycle of true evolution, and it never ends. But the man who commits to it, he becomes unstoppable. And now it's your turn. You made it. If you're still here, then something inside you refused to be average. Something in your soul said, I cannot keep living this way. And that voice, that whisper, is sacred. Because the world is not calling you to be perfect. It is calling you to be real. To be a man who feels deeply and moves with clarity. A man who chooses presence over performance. Stillness over escape. Discipline over destruction. But this path is not easy, and you were never meant to walk it alone. So if something in this message touched you, if a single sentence brought you silence, or tears, or truth, then I ask you from a place of brotherhood, like this video, not to boost a number, but to signal to the algorithm that this kind of depth matters. Comment below, share what landed. Speak your truth, because your words may give another man the strength to keep going. Share this video with someone you love, a brother, a friend, a younger version of yourself who needs to be reminded. You are not broken. You are just becoming. And if this kind of message speaks to your soul, if you're tired of surface level noise and ready to walk a path of inner mastery, subscribe to this channel. Join this tribe. This is a space for real men, for men who fall and rise, those who doubt and still choose to walk. Remember, you don't become unrecognizable by shouting louder. You become unrecognizable by going deeper, by showing up every day as the man you said you would be. Until next time, walk in peace, walk in presence, and never forget, the way forward is within.